We're back and we've got match number 1 coming right up for you. It's going to be Flurry versus Staz. And, you know, I think the question of just the different ends of the leaderboard for Division A, at least. Flurry currently second place, and that's only on tiebreakers. So in terms of wins, he's actually joint first in Division A, whereas Staz is at the bottom with only 1 victory under his name. So this matchup's going to be a big deal for him. Let's take a look straight away at the deck list. And Gia, Flurry on the rogue. What do you think of this rogue so far?
Yeah, I mean, we were discussing all throughout the weekend that there are so many types of rogues popping out of the woodwork post-nerfs. Apparently, Raiding Party is still a good card, is the opinion over in the Americas region. But over here in APAC, we've seen 2 different types of rogues. The Burgle Rogue, which Flurry and Dawn have been rocking, which are playing cards like Hench Clan Burglar, Blink Fox, and Vendetta to make use of that synergy. Whereas from Alutemu and Glory, we're seeing more of a tempo-based rogue with the double Waggle Pick, Deadly Poison, and Saucy Deckhand package. So this one is a little bit greedier. Yeah,
and this one, I'm slightly biased now because I spent most of yesterday playing a good chunk of the Raiding Party rogue. I think I was playing Crane's List, and it went very well. And all I see here is less cards that just go face. And that's the style I think is going to be pretty decent. When we've seen this rogue so far, I feel like it always wins, but in kind of scrappy ways more than anything. I feel like it has some powerful turns, mainly down to the Shark, but it's always like, it feels more difficult to get these big turns going to actually win, especially in a matchup against Warrior. And we can check out Staz's Warrior right now. It's going to be the Bomb Warrior, which is actually just a fairly standard list that we can have a quick look at. Then we can bring up the primary deck. And I think, what do you think of this matchup? Because the rogue can go slower, but I don't know if going slower is actually better against this warrior.
Yeah, generally when Bomb Warrior wasn't too popular and people were playing straight up Control Warrior, the rogue type of sideboards you would see would play very greedy things to try and go into the late game and beat the warrior, not necessarily in fatigue, but just have more and more refill by using things like the scheme and just multiple ways to bounce Heist Baron Togwaggle. But nowadays, Bomb Warrior can just beat you down with their curve. So I feel like the less greedy types of rogues actually have an advantage in the early game. Although the greedier rogues that have the Burgle package, Vendetta is an incredible card in this matchup because it does just deal with all the bomb generating minions pretty easily and things like Militia Commander after it's taken a trade.
Right, I think if you could play Vendetta and its effect would go off in the sort of party style rogue, the class would need nerfing again, I feel, because that card is absolutely nuts. But yeah, these 2 players, I struggle because I think I would naturally lean towards rogue as my preferred deck here, but I'm not sure I like this build enough. So I think just the security that the level of Bomb Warrior is at the moment just feels a little bit better overall. So I think Staz could take this one, and it's a big win. Knocking someone who's currently second place just down a peg or 2 and then moving yourself up is going to be pretty useful.
It's true. I do think I'd put the favor on the Bomb Warrior just slightly. Maybe less so against the Burgle Rogue than against more of a tempo-based rogue, because Staz is particularly running this double weapons project and Harrison package against that type of double Waggle Pick rogue, but it won't be as useful here.
It's true. The weapons project's a pretty nice inclusion. I know there's a lot of discussions about some of the early tech cards you play in Warrior.
Yeah, compared to Surrender's list, which doesn't have all the weapon removal and instead has Geppetto. Staz's is a bit more of the old school version of this.
And it's really funny as well, because whenever I read or talk about warrior techs, what to include, what not to, like Eternium Rovers, etc., whenever anyone brings up Weapons Project and they put their points forward as to killing off some small minions early game, which is important. Sometimes you do get run over a little bit in some matchups. There are some key minions with 2 health that you do want to kill early in the meta right now. And then on top of that, being able to just generate a big shield slam almost out of nowhere. There's also weapon semi-weapon removal as well. I always get sold on it, but I never actually put it in my own build, which is just a strange thing. Maybe that's where I'm going wrong.
Yeah, I'm not quite sure. And Staz actually just keeps it because this is just a solid 2, 3, 4, 5. I don't necessarily think he's going to weapons project on curve coin project into Project Raven. That's a curve.
Yeah, that's a lot of armor, to be fair.
Yeah, but I would say Rogue is a matchup where you don't necessarily have priority removals early on that weapons project can deal with. It's unlike Mage, which has the Sorcerer's Apprentice. It's unlike Hunter with the Hyenas.
Which has minions.
Yes.
But yeah, there's...
But it is just a solid thing to replace... I guess it is that sudden armor game for Shield Slam, which you mentioned, which Staz had I think maybe some nightmares against Edwin Van Cleef the other day, so...
I think as well, it's really not the worst weapon in the world at just killing off lackeys. You don't want to leave lackeys on board, one, especially because there's a Tog in this deck, but also, you know, there's the Shadow Steps, there's potential other bounces, there's even the Shark that you can, if you keep the board clear, there's less chance of something happening, of the Shark generating, you know, Shadow Step into more lackey effects and so on and so on. So I think just having something there is not bad at all.
Yeah. So going into Staz's turn 3, he has the option to clear the Blink Fox just by coining Militia Commander, but that's quite awkward for him because he doesn't have a good turn 4 follow-up. It does seem very slow to just play out an Acolyte to die and only draw 1 card though. I can see a world where he goes Armor Up Pass, so he saves the coin for Dinomatic, but then it's quite awkward because you probably expect the Rogue to go Hench Clan Burglar or something like that on 4, which puts a total of 6 health on board, and the Dinomatic cannot deal with it. So I definitely like the Militia Commander decision from Staz here.
Yeah, I think either I just mixed up names of cards then. The Militia Commander, or I wouldn't have been too upset at saving the coin and having Weapons Project equipped, and then have the coin Dinomatic and then the weapon swing to add that health up to be able to actually clear the board.
So Flurry, these are not great. I think you just take the Mutate because it's the only thing that's proactive.
Yeah, and sometimes you pay 1 extra mana for a 1/1 on that card as well when you get it as a lackey.
Witchy lackey, sure. Yeah.
It's definitely not the end of the world. Also, if this 4/3 does live, then even mutate into Miscreant next turn wouldn't be horrible, and then you've got 2 mana spare for lackeys potentially. Notice as well, Flurry could have killed off this Militia Commander with Vendetta, but he's holding on to it. He's just pretty confident that his Burglar's either going to live or it requires some level of trading from Staz.
Yeah, I think that the Vendetta can probably hit a better target, such as the Dinomatic, which is in hand, or even dealing the 4 to an Omega Devastator, so you can just ping it off with the dagger. And I think that the 1 damage from Staz here is actually pretty awkward to ask for because you don't want a Warpath just that.
Right.
But he is going to go for the Weapons Project, which I think makes perfect sense. He can curve into Harrison for next turn. You're not too upset if the Rogue gets the 1 charge and you can still draw 2.
Yeah, it's definitely not so bad. And even if you were bothered about not going Harrison, well, the second Weapons Project Harrison on turn 7, if so desired, to actually draw a full suite of cards.
Festeroot Hulk on curve. There was a time when this card was just released that people thought it would be nuts in Rush Warrior, but it is just pretty well statted in general.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing about that is, in terms of aggressive warrior cards, is there just aren't enough to make a deck right now is the biggest problem with cards like this. But when they're generated, then it's definitely not the worst minion just because it's health total.
Yeah. So Staz here can choose either Harrison and take the 2 draw right now, or he can clear this with the Dinomatic and his own weapon swing. I think it's a pretty tough decision, but since he doesn't have a guaranteed answer for the Festeroot, I personally might have leaned towards the Dinomatic.
Staz just isn't too afraid of it, really, is he?
Yeah. Next turn, I was just thinking there wouldn't be a guaranteed clear, but he drew into the Militia Commander, so. And in the end, the 5/4 lines up pretty well against the 2/5. I don't think you're confident that the Harrison ever sticks because Eviscerate and Vendetta are pretty likely.
Well, even now, Flurry could get this Shark just active, and the big thing is if he does that into Vendetta, then it means that just another or a Dynamatic will not kill off the Shark. Because that's one thing you have to set up as Rogue versus Warrior. You can't just Shark on 4 into their turn 5 on its own, because the Dynamatic just kills it through stealth anyway. He's going to go for Miscreant now.
I was wondering if he would hold it for the Shark, but the turn did seem very passive if he didn't play any other minion. Ah, yes, this is the good Direwolf positioning. I appreciate that, but he does get a Spirit of the Dragonhawk, not very useful in this matchup.
No. A nice mutate target though for next turn.
Sure. Flurry, in a very strong board position, hasn't been able to damage Staz very much, but I don't think he's too upset yet because he's got stuff to do for the next couple turns.
Yeah, he's got a decent chunk of stuff, hasn't he? And Staz hasn't done anything himself, to be completely honest. He's drawn some cards, but outside of that, It's just looking, his hand's just looking a little bit too thick right now in terms of mana cost. He can't do much in any one given turn. This weapon is going to be able to help clear at least the 1/1 off. But
Yeah, and I imagine you Militia Commander as well, but it's kind of sad to just armor up on this turn. I wonder if he goes for the early Omega Assembly. This is definitely a matchup where you don't need to hold on to that for 3 cards. I just think you can be relatively safe going into the late game, even if you don't have max value.
I wonder if he's ever considering Brawl. Not that this board is overly threatening, but you can't deal with it that well because you're leaving like the Miscreant up, for example. But it just feels kind of awkward. I think it's just an awkward turn, and sometimes you have those.
Yep. Choosing to hold the weapon as well, which I don't mind too much. I guess the 1/1 isn't very threatening, and it also leaving that on board kind of makes the Brawl worse for Flurry.
Right.
If you're planning to follow up into a Brawl turn.
Flurry has the option of just trading it off though and swinging the dagger in, which means that the Miscreants are a little bit healthier.
Yeah, and after that he could evolve the Miscreant. And though we said Flurry had stuff to do, it's just not great stuff to pair with your Shark. Just the Faceless Lackey for another 2-drop. Doesn't feel great to go this wide against the Warrior when they've drawn enough cards to potentially put them on having either Brawl or Warpath.
Right. And I'm a little bit surprised it's gone for this. It's kind of a... Oh, that's not bad.
Yeah, I think makes sense.
The 0/3 is kind of a double-edged sword in some ways, right? It's one extra minion that does nothing for Brawl to be good with. It makes your board wider. But also, it's a 0/3 that soaks potentially some hits from Dynomatic or Boombots and so on. So it's just kind of a weird glass half full, sometimes glass half empty approach.
I actually did like evolving the Zilliax because Flurry's got a hand which is like a bunch of small things, and a board state with a bunch of small things is often bad against Warrior because they can simply Warpath it. But when you have at least one beefy minion alongside the small things, you kind of put Staz on having Brawl, and then there's still a chance that something good survives from the Brawl. So it's kind of the 2-pronged threats thing you can do against Warrior.
I wonder if Staz can just play Alec into Clockwork Goblin.
Maybe... No.
And then follow up with Boom next turn, maybe. It's annoying because it's just slightly off curve. The plan is just completely off curve. But I feel like now he's going to take 7 next turn. But is that big a deal? I don't know if this was worth a Brawl.
It's tough to say. I think the 7 is quite relevant because he's seen Flurry like kind of have to scrap together threats, so you can maybe put him on having burst from hand and things that he would rather hold instead of develop.
That's the weird thing for me with this list though. The list doesn't really run burst. There's the 1 Waggle Pick, 2 Eviscerates, which has to be in every rogue list of course, and then Life Drinkers, but all this burst is super expensive.
Flurry's still holding onto the Shark there, even though he could have turned the Life Drinker Battlecry into a Fireball, essentially. I'm not sure if he's thinking he absolutely needs another Miscreant or some type of more value from the Shark to get there, but it looks like that's what he's thinking because just the Leroy Abyss often doesn't get there when the Warrior is this healthy. So hit in and Dynomatic is a guaranteed clear.
Yep.
Maybe...
And then there's a follow-up with the Clockwork Goblin as well, or the Alec, depending. Or even just the Acolyte, but I don't know if you need to spend mana on card draw right now.
Yeah, he's got a pretty full hand.
Staz has a lot.
I
Maybe
quite
he has
like the
shield.
Alec. Just because it's the toughest stat line to deal with.
I think the one health difference here, Staz is just saying, well, the Alec might actually do more later, whereas the Clockwork often just does this every time.
I guess 3 and 4 is not a huge difference to Rogue when they're playing things that often do 4, Eviscerate and Vendetta in particular. Akali the Rhino and the thing that summons 2 copies of a minion, your Dimensional Ripper, is it?
Yep.
That's value.
It is. But is it enough? Because it's copies of minions from your deck, right?
Yeah.
What's Flurry running that's worth 10 mana to play 2 of? I don't think there's any card apart from Leroy and Ziliax that it even evens out at.
Togwaggle, I guess.
I guess,
But
yeah.
it is seemingly exactly that, which is not great. And does he have rush minions remaining? Nope, he used Ziliax, so... It is expensive stuff, but not quite worth the price in this case. And Staz is approaching turn 10 when he can just go off with Assembly and the Devastator and have answers for days and days.
I wonder if this is just worth a Dr. Boom right now.
Yeah, unnerved. I mean, the old Dr. Boom.
Yes. Because the problem for me is it's all good. It's like my issue with the Brawl on the turn. I would have liked to have seen Staz play some minions. It's all good and well clearing the board, but the longer you wait against a value style rogue to actually do any threat yourself, well, Flurry's just going to do it again and again. And he's running Sharks, he's running Tog. He's going to be able to keep doing it. It's the actual strength of this road deck. So I really like this play from Staz. You can still whip in an armor up, which negates almost this Fox attack anyway. But then this puts some kind of threat onto the board that Flurry has to at least answer or consider.
Yeah, I do agree. And Flurry with the backstab, that is definitely not what he wanted to see. I think he wanted another Miscreant or Burglar, at least something that puts more stuff in his hand. If you rip the Dimensional Ripper, I feel like the average stat line is 3-3 or something.
Poor. I don't even know if it's 3-3.
Still got another Life Drinker and SIs.
Oh yeah, he's used 2 Miscreants, right? He's got 2 Cable Rats left.
Yeah.
Van Cleef's still in there, so it could be 2/2s.
And you never want to sap the boom. But is it such a desperate situation where he just has to rely on the Leroy damage getting there? It's so unlikely.
I have a question for you.
Yeah?
If Flurry had drawn a bomb, the one bomb in the deck, that turn, would you sap the boom? I'd consider
sure.
it.
Yeah,
you'd
I think
consider it,
so.
wouldn't you? If you
Yeah.
know there's no bombs afterwards, he's doing it anyway,
even if you
whatever.
know there is one bomb.
Yeah. But even if you knew there was 0 in the deck and they have to like put them back in again, like I think I would sap the boom. But I kind of like this from Flurry, although it feels bad because I think he has to do how much? 3? Oh. Is
Yeah.
he gonna kill it?
Oh, that's a pretty good outcome for Flurry.
Yeah, I think he has to do something, and this is my query with this deck as a whole. It never feels like it does enough, although Staz is under some health pressure right now.
Yeah. So Flurry, he ordered it in such a way where the Rhino could die to the bomb, but I think he just wanted to maximize the chances of the Shark surviving because he knows this hand needs some value. It needs minions that produce lackeys into Togwaggle, or it needs Myras. And any type of battle cry generation would really benefit off of the Shark, but it's just not quite enough in this instance.
Yeah, it's why Flurry's just definitely holding onto this Faceless Lackey, because the second he draws Tog, he needs to go. He can't just wait for more Lackeys to generate, so he'll need the Shark to live as long as possible to give him the highest chance of Tog happening twice, which means 2 treasures, which means twice as much value from that card you put in your deck. But now Staz has all the options in the world right now. The only thing Staz is missing a little bit in terms of ultimate power is Boom Mad Genius, because it would allow these mechs to be absurd, like the Omega Devastator kill 18 minions with its Battle Cry and Rush.
I would say he'd like a Warpath here just to be able to deal with everything at once, but he saw that Flurry had to sap the boom. He saw that Flurry didn't have a way of benefiting off of the Shark, so he's just saying remove the 5 power and go again. Why not?
I like it. This is why I mentioned earlier, of course, that if the bomb was drawn, then this would not be a good play because you just play a 7-mana 7/7. But because it was held onto, it wasn't bad, and Flurry just having to go for 10 mana summon 2 SI7 agents.
Told you it was average 3-3 because, you know, the outcome is always the average.
Yes, that is exactly how that works. I will not argue with you,
And
even though I want to.
unfortunately for Flurry, still no value off of the Shark, but he is just saving the Shadow Step for the Leroy. I was thinking if he was desperate enough to have to step the Blink Fox and get another 2 warrior cards, but I feel like the guaranteed extra 6 damage is probably more valuable in this situation. And Staz can assemble, he can use Dinomatic. No, the Boom is not a mech. But I do think the Omega Devastator is going to do something
Ooh.
this turn.
Another Clockwork Goblin, not bad.
Skaterbot can buff a Boombot. Just something cute to do.
I think
feel
most
like,
importantly,
yeah.
it gives rush, right? So it means the Omega Devastator can kill 2 things in
Oh,
a
yeah,
turn,
true.
which is pretty sick.
Yeah, I mean, as long as Staz just plays minions and removes all the damage here, what can Flurry do to come back on board? It's very difficult as the rogue to swing turns when they're on so few cards. I'd like to see the Alec come down here as well. There's just no reason to not pressure the rogue, right? And I think Staz was shaking his head a little bit there.
Okay.
Maybe the rope got to him a bit.
Yeah, a little bit. I was, as long as he played the Eternium Rover, I'm not so upset with this turn from Staz. I think maybe he could have put on a bit more pressure, but as long as the hero power comes down, you get the Eternium Rover down as well as clearing the board, it's fine. There was a lot of options that turn, especially because Staz had a bit of a delay in playing the Omega Assembly, because I think he was working out if there's a turn where he needs to utilize all of his mana.
Yep.
But I think it's fine. He holds the Dynamatic as well, which means that if there's something else he needs to just spot remove, he can almost consistently get rid of it, even if it's, or especially if his boom is removed. And welcome to desperation plays.
Yeah. It's pretty sad. Does he chuck in the Faceless Lackey too and hope to get Doomsayer and at least soak 7 damage maybe?
You can't afford to, right?
I mean, I was thinking he won't replay the Leroy and then just do that.
Oh, sure.
But he does cash in the Leroy now, just so if he draws Myros off the top, he has more mana to work with for the kill. But it's just not going to happen, even without the Zilliax off the top, because he has used an Abyss already. And there is still another Shadow Step, though, I think.
Yeah, I think most importantly, the Shield Block and Weapons Project still exists.
Yes,
There's
that
this Zilliax
too.
as well. Dr. Boom Mad Genius would have done a almost identical job this turn, and so on, and so on, and so on.
Yeah.
And this is, I don't know, I'm probably going too hard on this deck, but this Rogue style I'm not been a huge fan of this weekend. I think it doesn't do enough consistently. It's also missing, to a certain extent, a good chunk of card draw, right? There's some card generation, which is great, but actually getting through your deck, I think there's, I'm just glancing now, there's pretty much only Myra's that does anything to get through the deck. So it makes it a little bit tough when you go a little bit dry there, and without guaranteeing drawing Tog, you can't make those truly crazy plays happen with the treasures. But good job for Staz there, getting a win on the table, and if game 2 goes anything even close to that, he's going to be feeling very, very comfortable in getting this win for him and starting to recover this league score he has so far. So that was just game number 1. We've got the rest of the series coming up. Don't go anywhere, we'll be right back.
Welcome to Hearthstone Masters. Today, we're going to share one of the biggest changes coming to Hearthstone in 2019, an entirely new competitive format called Specialist. Specialist will be the default competitive format for Hearthstone Masters. From online Masters qualifiers to live Masters Tour events to the pinnacle of competition, Hearthstone Grandmasters. Ready to learn how the new Specialist format works? Let's dive right in. In this new competitive format, players select 3 30-card decks to bring to a Specialist tournament. The catch? All decks must be from the same class. In this regard, Specialist is a major departure from most other competitive formats. Amongst every player's 3 Specialist decks, one is designated as the primary deck. The player's other 2 decks are designated as secondary and tertiary decks. There are no special limitations placed on a player's primary deck aside from regular Hearthstone deck construction rules. However, a player's secondary and tertiary decks must share at least 25 cards in common with their primary deck. In other words, secondary and tertiary decks must mirror the primary deck with up to 5 cards swapped out. It is important to point out that duplicate cards count when comparing to a primary deck. For example, if you want to include 2 copies of Twilight Drake in your secondary deck, and there are no copies of Twilight Drake in your primary deck, then you must spend 2 swaps to include both cards. Unique or not, if a card isn't in your primary deck, it counts towards the 5-card difference limit. A player's primary deck is important for another reason. Whenever a new match starts, both its players must begin by piloting their primary deck. Only after the first game concludes can you choose to swap into your secondary or tertiary deck. You do not announce which of your decks you will be using in the next game, and you do not have to swap. After every game, this process repeats, allowing players to swap or stay until the match concludes. Importantly, you can swap to any of your decks between games, primary, secondary, or tertiary, including returning to your primary deck if you have previously swapped out of it. And those are all the rules for Specialists, Hearthstone's new official competitive format. So what are you waiting for? Get out there and start brewing your own primary, secondary, and tertiary decks to get a jump start on the new format and innovate like the pros.
Let the battle begin!
We've got Flurry versus Staz continuing right now. Staz taking a very, very confident win, I would say, versus Flurry's Rogue. Both players are actually sticking to their primary deck as well. Not using the secondary or tertiary that they could use if they wanted to, but having a quick glance over these lists, they're not really built for it, at least in my opinion. Not really getting the job done versus each other. So it's just going to be a rematch on exactly the same decks, and if that's going to happen again, I think Staz might have this in the bag.
Yeah, I definitely agree that he had a dominating performance in Game 1. And as you mentioned, the secondaries are teched for Mage, which a lot of people expected it, and that's why they were trying to counter it somehow this week. But it's just so funny how it worked out in APAC that everybody's got basically at least one of their 3 decks hitting absolutely nothing.
Right. And look at this already. This is teaching me. This is Flurry giving us free lessons here.
Oh, yeah.
Because my biggest question and query in the last game was, how do you consistently get there with the Rogue? Well, you keep togging your opening hand. You don't mulligan it. So it means that Flurry is just instantly playing for the long game, which stylistically we can have a separate discussion about. But for if you're running this, if you're choosing to run this deck, you don't have a consistent aggressive option to try and just win the game quickly. So you may as well keep the big powerhouse card. So I completely agree with this. And along with Blinkfox, and then getting the 2 Cable Rats, Flurry's got a, I would say at least a pretty solid opening hand.
For sure. And Staz, he keeps the Eternium Rover just to be an annoyance to the Rogue. But because this type of Rogue is not even running deckhands to play on 1, they're not too upset about the Rover either. It is just, as I mentioned, an annoyance. It can deal with your Cable Rats, but now we can clearly see from Flurry, as you mentioned, that the game plan is to go long.
Yeah, we'll see Staz's response. He just hover the Omega Assembly a little bit. He might just think about doing it next turn instead because it utilizes all of his mana so he can armor up twice. But I like this, and we see no Cable Rats, of course, from Flurry because he doesn't want to just feed this Eternium Rover. I do like the assembly, though, and I like the look of that Clockwork Goblin.
And extra bomb, always good.
Yeah. And also a minion going into Ziliak's turn, potentially.
Well, there is some merit to the Framebot just because it comes down this turn. I mean, I want to snap pick Goblin every time I see it as Bomb Warrior, but the 1/5, that's an awkward stat line for the Rogue, I suppose.
Maybe.
And it almost, well, not almost always, but pretty often, I would say, can survive into a Ziliak's turn.
Yeah, it does. It has a decent setup. My worry is the payoff good enough for the risk? If you play it, it gets cleared off. Well, it didn't do much. It doesn't do a lot of damage by itself. The payoff is getting a higher health Ziliax, but with Flurry running double sap, that could be a nightmare because you can sap it and it becomes a Framebot again, which sucks. There's also the Vendettas in the deck. I think the Clockwork Goblin, although the Framebot can get work, the Clockwork Goblin just gets the job done every single time, right? It's just a 3-mana 3/3 that shuffles the bomb, done.
I was tempted to take the Framebot simply because it curves really well, because I think Staz is pretty much locked into Red Caliber on turn 4 because it would have answered this Blinkfox, it would have answered a coin 4/3 Burglar. But as you mentioned, it is, I guess, more consistent overall.
I think for me as well is, with the armor and a slow start from a slow Rogue deck, I don't think you're expecting to play Ziliax on 5 anyway.
Sure.
So at worst, you can Goblin on 5 with armor up. Like, that's still an absolutely fine turn as far as I'm concerned.
It would have been interesting to see Staz maybe morph into the aggressor in this matchup. If you think the Rogue is going to go long, then, well, maybe if you just stick some minions and magnetize them, you turn into a mech warrior, and then the bombs close the game. But the rest of the hand doesn't necessarily support that, so I get that. And Flurry now can build a decent-sized Edwin, along with this Vendetta and Coin.
May as well go for it.
Yeah.
Staz is running double shield slam, but no executes, and nothing like BGH in his primary list as a general rule, of course. So there aren't tons of just easy answers to this, to be completely honest. With such low armor as well, means that no matter how unfavored you might feel against any class, if you're a rogue, you can always cleave someone, and it works, and they often just die.
This brawl 50-50. I don't think that happens. You can probably wait one more turn with the Clockwork Goblin, but...
What if you Ziliax... Wait, sorry. Look, I'll do order before chat gets me.
Okay.
What if you swing with the weapon and Ziliax into it to heal some of the damage back, and then next turn you can just weapon project it down? Is that too much of a silly plan?
Well,
or maybe next turn you can even warpath it
yeah,
down.
that, I was saying that
I'm just
makes more
saying
sense.
you put the cleave to 2, and you've not took tons of damage, and you can guarantee clear it unless there's like Shadow Step and more stuff, and he replays the cleave, which fine, then you can brawl. I don't think that's so bad. Staz is probably...
You do take the 16 and heal back the 3, but this is kind of a bad situation that I wouldn't have hated that, but I think Staz is now just going for the plan of Flurry, maybe you play more minions and then I get to brawl, which is not unreasonable, I think.
You also heal more than that sometimes, right? Because the Ziliax doesn't die from the hit, so it still has to be dealt with.
Sure.
It's an after. Obviously, we can see that there are ways that it can just be removed, and there often are against Rogue, but I think potentially relying on a brawl scares me a little bit here, because the second Van Cleef wins, you just lose.
Yeah. And my question here from Flurry is, if you put Staz on having to have Brawl to answer this, do you just step your 1/1 minion so that removes the worst case scenario and also puts the Edwin back on 50-50 to survive instead of 33%?
I wouldn't have hated it, to be completely honest, because what else is the step for right now?
Well, probably the Togwaggle. But oh my
I told
God,
you!
Staz
I told you! It lives every time, and then you just lose.
This is the 3rd time Staz has brawled into an Edwin, and the Edwin has survived this weekend alone. That's crazy. But I think that, on average, that should be better than taking the 16.
So many choices.
Yeah, but he doesn't take 16, right? That's the thing. Because he heals for some of it instantly. So he takes 13, right?
Sure.
And then if the Ziliax
okay,
is traded
maybe.
into,
It's
he only
never
takes 10.
traded into, I would say.
Well,
okay, fine.
I'm just saying that you either take 13 or 10, and it guarantees a clear unless Flurry does some really weird stuff, right?
Yeah.
And then
I mean,
the problem is, if it lives, you just lose, is my fear.
it is really tough to say. I'm leaning more towards your play, not because of this 1-in-3 outcome, but I think because Flurry had counterplay to not play into the brawl.
Right. Yeah,
And
we
he-
saw Flurry could have
yeah.
Shadow Steps, which would have helped.
Yeah, and he did kind of play into the brawl, but did not get punished. I'm not saying that that was objectively a misplay, but it seemed like Staz really struggled to answer it last turn. In any case, Flurry is just so far ahead now. He's also just got Tog next turn with the Goblin Lackey or a Lackey off of the Cable Rat if he wants to. But I imagine this turn could be just the Fester Hulk, which he got again.
Yeah, that's a little bit... Flurry just likes that card, right? I don't know how he keeps getting it.
I mean,
But there's a lot of options here. I'm trying to work out what the plan is, because every time you have Eviscerate and a Waggle Pick in your hand, you've got to start considering, well, how much damage can I just do? Because it's so much.
yeah, the Waggle Pick, though, when your opponent is running Harrison and the second weapons project, when you've got Edwin on board, is very sketchy.
Right. And that's why I mean why you add up the overall damage, and it's obviously worth playing a minion, because you're not going to kill them next turn, right?
So Staz can now deal with this Edwin, but he should swing with the Wrench Caliber first so he doesn't replace his weapon.
He doesn't need the 2 damage, right?
Well, he can use 3 on it, but it does not kill this Fester Root, so maybe it just goes face.
Staz is just under so much pressure. It's so scary.
Oh wait, sorry, he's only got the 7. Oh no, it's 8 armor. What am I talking about? For some reason, I thought the weapons project was like a shield block. Yeah, it's,
Okay.
it
no,
is
yeah,
enough.
It's 8.
Yeah, but the whole problem with that play is that he can't even fit the Clockwork Goblin into the turn.
Oh,
so
yeah,
he's-
you do nothing else pretty
yeah,
much, right?
he's floating 2 mana and leaving the Fester Root on board. But I don't think he's got a better option.
Well, it's either that or probably die, because it's not as if Flurry's out of cards. You know, like last game where Flurry barely had anything in hand? That's just not the case. And I think Staz has got a reasonable read that's not the case.
Oh, Flurry's got value for days. And he's also got burst. I think he can corner Staz from all different approaches in this situation.
Yeah, it's just getting harder and harder. I think I like the Wondrous Rock Wand.
I feel like we're always on different pages on whether to take the Wander Crown. I was looking at the Crown simply because he's already baited a brawl from Staz, and you saw Staz have to expend so many resources to deal with that Edwin.
Yeah.
But the one is never bad.
Yeah. Well, I'm
So-
just thinking, what does Flurry need now? I don't think he needs value. I think he needs to just kill Staz. And there's Leroy, there's another Eviscerate, there's another Shadow Step. There's a lot of cards that would just win him the game if he draws them next turn. So I don't think that Flurry's after the value. With Staz just on 18 health, he can just end the game.
Yeah, what I was thinking is that the only way Staz answers this board cleanly is to have exactly the second brawl, in which case you beat that too with the Crown in most situations. But I do agree that, like, in all likelihood, the one gets you there also. The Tog being on 5 health makes this just awkward enough that the Warpath and Swing doesn't clear everything.
So many choices.
I mean, maybe he has to Harrison and Frey, but what can he even get? Yeah, it's
Oh, this
just
is
gotta be
probably
the...
better.
Yeah, and does he clear the Tog and the 1/1 or the Fester Root Pulp?
I think you kill the Fester, right?
Leaving
that's
a
the one-
Tog on board.
But that's
Yeah.
the one that could just get you.
Yes,
Whereas
yeah.
Tog, it needs to be Shadow Stepped and then replayed. That's still a lot of mana even with the Shadow Step effect.
Yeah, that is pretty rough. And if Flurry wanted to, he could get many, many more treasures here. But I think he's more after just a better way to deal with this magnetized Clockwork Goblin, because he
Yeah.
doesn't want it to heal another 6. I think he's fine with putting the Eviscerate into it, though.
Yeah, I think worst case as well, depending on how Flurry's feeling the rest of this game is going to go, he could always just Shadow Step the Tog and then wait, and then next turn he can play a Lackey with the Shark and the Shadow Stepped Tog all in one turn anyway to get treasures. So I think starting with Wand, seeing what your options are, and then going from there is absolutely fine.
Yeah, for sure.
Because he doesn't need to play the Tog again this turn, right? Because he has Lackey Generation.
I mean, 2 saps still in the deck. Great off of the wand here for the easiest way to deal with this. Vendetta is also decent.
SI.
SI,
Yep,
yeah.
that's absolutely fine. 0 mana Miscreant.
the
Zero
mana.
zero mana Leroy. Why not?
Yep,
See,
and-
this is way better than 2 legendaries. Look at this turn. He's just dead, right?
Yeah, if Flurry got
Ooh.
the actions in, but...
Oh.
Oh my, did he miss it?
oh.
In all likelihood, it won't matter, but...
Wait. Okay, well, at least he got the Shadow Step off.
Yeah, okay.
Oh, did he miss the
played and
attack?
he,
Did he mi-
oh my.
Oh, the rope
Oh my goodness.
is it's the most
Wait.
savage killer in Hearthstone.
And now,
the
and now
rope.
Staz can clear all of this. Probably using Dynomatic over the quad warp. Oh wait, maybe, yeah, 3 warpaths and hero power gets you there. After trading 2 whelps into the Tog.
Well, you end, yeah, but you end up only
Yeah.
needing 2, right? Because you
Oh,
go
yeah, you
3
can
into
trade-
Tog, 1 into the SI, and then save
Yeah.
2 mana.
But if you do that, I mean, so you play the Dynomatic for no. I feel like maybe Dynomatic is better with a warpath and a hero power, just so you have some
Okay.
board presence.
Oh, Harrison, go. Leave yourself on 5. You've just seen Leroy play. I mean, it's super sketchy, but
Yeah.
I gotta move.
It's still not
Yeah.
perfect for Staz, of course, but Staz now just has an option of stabilizing because, frankly, Flurry should have just won the game and didn't. He's just going to go for the safe play, right?
Yeah.
This is better.
Yeah, this is... I was looking for the way to end up with this board state while using a minion and also having armor, and this is just the simplest.
Let's bear in mind, though, that Staz could still just be dead because with Shark creating, what, 4-6 lackeys if he wants this turn? That can be a lot. And those lackeys doing 2 things each.
Yeah.
This is probably lethal in... I'd love someone to tell me what the percentage is, but there's 4 damage already. And then there's...
Waggle
and then there's the
pick,
Waggle pick. Yeah, wow. So Flurry got away with it. He was in a good spot anyway, as you could see. He had well over lethal anyway this turn. It was very, very likely with that Shark, but you cannot make mistakes like that in this league. You cannot do it. That was not even an overly... There wasn't tons of trades required, right? It was Leroy Shadow Step Leroy after the 1 to kill,
It was
and the Leroy just didn't swing second time.
Yeah, it was just the hesitation on whether to start with the 1 that turn, and granted it wasn't obvious, but then I think a lot of pro players I've heard that their pet peeves are starting the turn super late when the turn branches into several decisions. Which
Mainly
is
card draw a lot of the time, right?
So, and discover effect. So I think Flurry's going to be a little bit upset about the sloppiness, but of course happy that he took the win, and now we're going to go to game 3.
Yeah, he did get away with it, even in it all up. Flurry versus Staz. Game number 3 coming up in a minute.
What's up, Hearthstone fans, and welcome to the second episode of The Curve, where we draw the biggest headlines from this past weekend on Curve. I'm your host, Derek Brown. Let's do this. Flurry and Dawn continued their dominance in Asia Pacific, finishing with a perfect 4-0 match record. That brings Cloud9's overall record to 10-2, best among all teams with 2 or more members, despite teammate Kalento's 2 losses in the European region. The group will look to stay on top heading into Week 3. Psycho's impressive run to start the season continued in Grandmasters Europe, as he defeated both Yala and Swids to improve to a 4-0 record overall. Even better, he now sits at a perfect 8-0 game record. He'll look to keep his win streak alive next week as he takes on the world champion, Hunter Ace. Despite the nerfs to Rogue this past week, 2 Brave Americas players, Monsanto and Strifecrow, decided to bring the class anyway. Their risk paid off though, as both players went 2-0 this past weekend. Monsanto leads the entire Americas region with a dominant 4-0 match record, while Strifecrow sits in second place in the A division with a 3-1 record. With all of the Hearthstone Grandmasters being front and center, let's not forget to check in with our friends in China. This year, China is running 2 tournaments that will lead into playoffs and then the World Championship later this year. We'll keep you posted on the Gold Open and the Gold Team Championship. In this week's Meta Moment, we continue to highlight the Mage. After a warrior-infested Week 1, Mage came out to dominate Week 2. Of the 48 matches played across all regions, 42 of those matches contained a Mage. Outside of mirror matches, the Mage class only had a 50% win rate, and yet it's still the talk of the town as one of the best decks. We'll continue to see if the deck can sustain its popularity and find out if it truly is one of the most dominant classes in this meta. If you missed any of the Grandmasters action, you can check out the VODs on our YouTube page, youtube.com/Hearthstone Esports. Don't forget to follow us on Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube as Grandmasters resumes this weekend. That's it for us. We'll see you in the tavern.
one more game left of this series between Flurry and Staz, and the series has been very, very back and forth. It looked very, very safe for Staz based on game number 1 at least, but then one Van Cleef later and everything just becomes a mess again. But Staz did have the opportunity to almost certainly guarantee a clear over the course of a couple of turns, didn't go for it, but then Flurry nearly threw the game as well by missing with that Leroy. It was so nuts.
Yeah, I mean, in those 2 games, we did see just either player go completely dominant over the others, and just there wasn't that much the other player could do in most instances, aside from what you said, maybe clear the Edwin over a couple turns. I'm sure Staz is really sad about how he interacts with Edwins in general, but we did see Flurry's hand, even post-Edwin, was really nuts with the Togwaggle draws. So now I think I want to see both players having great draws instead of just one in game 1 and one in the other. Let's see a Togwaggle versus Boom on curve type of game. I'm ready, Raven.
Yeah, and I think Staz will be ready for that kind of game because I feel the Warriors got the better end of the stick overall in that one. But let's get straight into it. Game number 3 between Flurry and Staz, and you can see on the screens there, the difference between both players' records is quite significant as they are pretty much mirrored. And for one player, that's never a good thing, as Flurry currently 4-1 and Staz 1-4. So a big win here it would be for Staz just to keep him afloat, I would say, and keep him in the running. But Flurry has a chance to just continue chilling out at the top of Division A.
I know, Flurry's had his first taste of defeat only this weekend.
Yep.
So I'm sure he's looking to just call that a fluke and keep dominating with his performance. But the early hand doesn't have too much in terms of threats, but I guess if we take last game as any indication, maybe the Rogue doesn't care too much about that early game. As long as they can roll into that Togwaggle value, they're probably fine.
Yeah, on the other hand, Staz has a pretty decent opening as far as it goes with his list. I think just getting an Elic out early, having the flexibility of having that weapons project there, and then Dynomatic just as a safety card for turn 5 is always nice, maybe even turn 4, depending on how the coin is used. But with that draw, I would love to see a coin Elic from Staz and just turn up the heat a little bit.
I completely agree. The only thing you're scared of is exactly Blink Fox into Vendetta, I would say, or outside of the crazy Edwin turns with backstab and stuff. But this type of Burgle Rogue from Flurry and Dawn is not running preparation. So it's actually tough to clear the 3-4 on turn 3, I think, from the Rogue. You're asking for exactly the Vendetta.
Yeah, and especially because there's no 1-drops as well, it means that there's no even 1-drop into Eviscerate, right? So they are missing some of those options. It looks like Staz is going for it. I like this a lot. Instead of Flurry taking he's taking his time in this matchup and setting up some really powerful plays, Staz is going to turn up the heat, and this Polar Goblin's going to be a real nice follow-up.
2 bombs potentially turning into 6 bombs.
Play the one off the top.
Oh.
Still though, the onus is on Flurry here to do something. He does have the Waggle pick, which definitely isn't too shabby.
But Staz has the perfect answer for it by replacing it with Weapons Project and then rolling into the Harrison for probably 2 draws on turn 5.
I think it's needed though, right? I don't think Flurry can let this continue, or he'll be dead very soon.
Oh yeah. So Staz can actually choose to be very aggressive and simply shuffle a 3rd bomb into the deck. But then leaving the Waggle on board when you're sure it's going to kill a minion does seem kind of scary. The Weapons Project is there to deal with Waggle picks.
Right.
Exactly, I think, in the meta right now.
And there is only the one in the deck for Flurry, so it means that the Waggle picks are just gone now, so it's a lot of damage removed there for Flurry, for Staz, sorry. Staz can continue with this pressure. It's not the end of the world, just pressing armor up and going all the way up to that high total now. Flurry does have his 2-3 weapon he got from the Weapons Project, of course, but it's a little bit tricky to get the job done.
Yeah, he just needs a safe turn to land the Miscreant and then get to that turn 7 so he can go Lackey and Togwaggle, but
maybe it's just backstab this turn.
Perhaps, and Life Drinker.
I was thinking Miscreant, just get it down.
Oh, sure, yeah.
No,
I'm also looking at the Shark to pair with the Miscreant, but if you go for the guaranteed play of that onto turn 7, then you're delaying the Tog even longer. So I do like this.
Yeah, that's a very late game plan, isn't it? Ooh.
Double Witchy Lackeys. Can get a 4-drop right now. Not too bad.
And this is where we'll already start to see Flurry's overall opinion of the matchup. into what he actually does with these lackeys. Because he has no more lackey generation in hand, apart from, okay, Shadow Step, there we go. Yeah, kind of lackey generation. So he is going to choose to replay the Miscreant, I guess. Or maybe he holds it because he's scared of Dynamatic.
And I think also to maximize the value off the Shark, I think that's,
wow, that's a lot
pretty
of
strong
lackeys.
indeed. And as for Staz, he probably knows there's a Shark in hand because otherwise Flurry would most likely replay the Miscreant there, but he does have that great Harrison turn onto a no pressure board.
Face. Is there any real reason not to swing the weapon here? 3 charges is a lot of charges to use, and you've still got 2 weapons in your deck.
Maybe. No.
Sure, yeah, I can see just the hit here, but I can't think of a strong enough reason in either direction, hit or not hit.
Okay.
So Shark and Miscreant draws him another 4 lackeys, and he can go for double evolves. But I think if he could somehow generate another class card, then the Vendetta would be great, but there's no way to do that with Ethereal Lackey, obviously.
Yeah, the activators for Vendetta in the deck are Blink Fox, as long as it's not a mirror, and then the Henge Clan Burglars.
Flurry's just thinking here, I mean, he's in such a strong position value-wise because of the Shark and the Togwaggle, but now he's worried about the alternate game plan that the Bomb Warrior can go for, which is just beating them down. He could just take for this turn if he didn't get, the couple Lackey, that's pretty likely.
Also as well, the Ethereal could, mana required of course, can get you a spell that does then generate another class spell or card. So you can get there with lackeys to activate Vendetta. It's just not super common.
So for Staz now, the Shark is always a frustration when you don't have Warpath, and I think Flurry is fearing exactly the triple Warpath turn.
Do you ever Shield Slam? I think it's worth it.
So you can Dynamatic.
Yeah.
I don't hate it. Yeah.
Because you already know that Flurry has an army of lackeys.
Yeah.
But you don't want him to have an army of treasures.
So many.
True.
1, that's a weird army.
Like,
But 2, that's a problem in terms of the late game.
even if you don't think he has Tog, just giving him an army of spells from Ethereal Lackeys too is a huge threat. So I think it's worth using the Dynomatic and the Shield Slam. But
It stops games getting silly, right? Oh, another Clockwork. Just go for the mass bomb play. Let's go. Let's go for lethal.
Staz needs to be the aggressor here. Wow, brawl into this board.
Oh, the Shark's gonna live. It's just the way Staz has been going. Okay, got away with it. Nice.
Finally got the best result for Staz. But I'm not too sure about that brawl. I mean, you know he's got a ton of lackeys. I guess they're cleared by Dynomatic, but...
Not if they're evolved a million times. They're all witchy lackeys. Just make one massive target. But this means Tog's going to come down, yes, without the Shark. But most importantly, Flurry can just choose to do... Does he ever evolve all these lackeys? I say evolve, transform all these lackeys into legendaries? So crazy.
Would be fun.
Well, 3 of them are the evolve ones anyway, which is arguable what's better, a targeted evolve or a legendary minion. I don't know the answer to that.
Yeah.
But
I mean, I'm thinking, is it better to have a bunch of legendaries rather than the guaranteed 3 draw for 0?
maybe. You've got a lot of cards in hand.
Tough to say. But after watching Worlds and how Rafam performed in general, I don't think I've ever taken the what was it, the 6/6 taunt in my life. Even, sorry, only from Elise, but not when it's a choice.
Right, okay.
Staz started already with the Militia Commander trade there, which makes me think he's gonna order some bombs. I believe that is the 3rd bomb in the deck, and there's still a natural Clockwork Goblin in the deck, so maybe he is just going for the burn game plan.
Precision. Perfection.
Here comes the evolve.
6 drop, could be up to, wow!
Okay.
That's pretty nuts.
Again.
Is there a 7 attack charge, a 7 mana charge?
I don't think so. I
But
think
there
the
are
8s.
8 mana.
Yeah.
Alakir, hello, let's go. But I don't know if Flurry needs to expend more than this. Just the 5/7 body is already quite awkward for the warrior to deal with, especially since you shaved an extra 4 armor for free.
You want something better? He did not get something better. It's one of the swings and a miss that's available in the 8-drop spot.
Staz wishing he had a warpath here, and the swing and Dynomatic is 1 short from being able to clear everything.
Do you just do it anyway?
I mean,
So
again, I don't
choices.
hate the
The slam?
Yeah, hero power, shield slam, Dino. But I feel like Staz has been religiously holding on to the shield slam.
He's got PTSD from Van Cleef.
I don't blame him.
But the worry is, I'm worried at this point in the game what the shield slam's being held for, because Flurry doesn't often make a massive Van Cleef.
Maybe he put Flurry on having, or possibly having the crown. Okay, this is the best outcome for Staz. I guess maybe on average the Dynomatic is still pretty good.
Because the frustration
number
is
4.
if the poison wouldn't die, then that's a little bit annoying just because one of your minions just gets insta-killed.
True.
But got away with it there.
I want to see Flurry draw some bombs off of this, just because the interaction is funny. Oh, yeah, because that means the drawn card does not get discounted. At least the first
Yep,
one.
there's Sap for 2 mana, which should be 0, but isn't.
Oh, and the third one doesn't get the discount either. That's
I knew
pretty
the monkey was the right
unfortunate.
pick. You play around this bomb play with the wand.
Sure.
Still Shark into SI is available. But now Flurry has to work out. This is last Shark, and at 0 mana, it's obviously very, very powerful. But he's got to just work out what level of value he's happy with. Because I also don't think he can afford to have a slow turn here either. I think he needs to do something at least reasonably impactful.
I do like the Shark SI. He can also use the Kobold Lackey to deal with the other minion, and he can play one of the Cable Rats.
Oh, what about... You could Shark Life Drinker as well. I think getting Life Drinker down with Sharks is pretty nice because of the bombs. So
Yeah.
that was 2, right? So there's 2 left in the deck.
I guess Flurry feels pretty pressured here. He's in this weird position where he's used the high value cards, so now, for me, my inclination in his position would to be start looking for burst potential using your eviscerates and saving things for face. But Flurry's at such a low health total, and Staz is so healthy that he probably doesn't feel like he can go for that yet.
I think Staz should definitely keep hold of Ziliax.
For sure, yeah.
Omega Devastator, Killer Minion to Ziliax go is nuts.
That
it's
is-
saving your life basically in any game.
One of the most back-breaking plays from
Right.
Warrior these days is that exactly. I think he's just thinking if he wants to go shield block with Militia Commander or just hero power. And I wouldn't mind just a hero power.
Why not? If you're giving Flurry nothing on board, the hero power is probably worth more because this is almost always Militia Commander here. So I feel like this is just potential over time armor loss.
Could be. I mean, that was my instinct too, but it could be that Staz is thinking of just cycling towards his either of the booms sooner. Staz has not drawn Boom Mad Genius at all throughout this series yet. Ethereal Lackey for 2 spells.
And we do, just to know as well, Flurry
Ooh, Vanish.
playing this out a little bit quicker than the last time he got burnt by the rope. So at least he's getting these activations going pretty quick and at least can spend time on these decisions and not whether he's going to play the Shark into whatever.
Honestly, the picks weren't that
Oh,
great. Vanish
Shadow
is just
Step.
too slow, but yeah, the Shadow Step now is just the better version of Vanish in this case.
Could have took Pickpocket, I guess, if you're potentially in a long-term game plan. Does activate Vendetta as well, but I think just Shadow Step does a better job overall.
Ooh, Mana Worm. Of course, this whole board will probably die to Warpath.
Right.
I just think he might want to cash in the Life Drinker while the Shark is
Yeah,
still
Life
guaranteed,
Drinker,
of course.
Shadow Step, Life Drinker. I love it.
2 Fireballs and 2 Holy Lights.
It's a
I'd
pretty
play
good
that
turn.
card.
Oh, he didn't Shadow Step. He Shadow Step the Lackey.
Okay. And because of the rope, he did not have the time to discover a double instead. I don't know. Oh,
No.
or he's
Is
just
it just
gonna
gonna
take.
auto? Yeah, that definitely autoed, right? Yep.
Yeah.
He did not. He
although-
definitely didn't pick those.
But the sprint is not too bad, and Abyss is never bad, I'd say.
It's still just. It's bad not having a choice.
Yeah, I
If
mean,
that,
it
if
is
that
definitely
card said
sloppy.
give you a random rogue spell, it would be
Yeah.
significantly worse.
I mean, I do want to like not blame Flurry for
So
playing the
many
lackey
choices.
at the end to guarantee 2 random, well, semi-random spells versus later on probably just 1 spell even though you can choose it. But I do think that at this level in GM, if you're gonna be having complicated turns like that, you gotta do the early parts of it faster.
I have to agree because also it was a conscious choice to bring this deck, and the deck often plays this way. So it's not like it should be. It's not like in some games stuff happens, right? And then you're like, okay, this is super complicated turn out of nowhere. Like the deck often does this.
You always play the extra warpath to assert dominance, but I do wonder why not play the Elic there, but maybe Staz just wants to, you know, save it for more bomb generation. She still does have, I think, another Clockwork Goblin because the 2 were discovered, and then a Wrench Caliber.
It's 2 wrench calibers, right?
Yeah, 2, so perhaps
It's a lot of bombs.
Sorry. It sucks being sick, Raven.
It does.
But yeah, I mean, Staz is in this position where he's run Flurry out of quite a few cards. He knows there are some random spells generated, but in terms of minion threats, he's seen the Tog and he knows that the treasure was not a crown. And even if there is a big Edwin coming out sometime soon, he has Mega Devastator with the Zilliax
Right, which
to
is
heal back
insane.
up. So he might be thinking Flurry needs exactly Myra's to refill after he's dealt with the next minion board, in which case the bombs from the Elic, if he gets one of his 3 remaining bomb generators in the deck, will just guarantee damage.
This is super weird from Flurry now, though. Not because of anything he's particularly done at the moment,
Maybe
but more is I don't know what cards win him the game. If Staz stabilizes just once, he just loses, right? Because sure, Myra draws a ton of cards, but there still has to be usage for Sap and Vendetta before that happens, because you can't just be minus cards because they're too expensive. Sprint is also very expensive. As you mentioned earlier, there's no prep in this deck. And there's damage, but Staz also can heal, so I don't know what the big planned turnaround play is for Flurry to actually win this game.
I don't see it either. I feel like he needs to discover something extra. Staz here, just gonna take the weapons project value while he can. Weapons never getting bigger than the deadly poison because the pick's already gone, yeah? So there's just the 1 bomb remaining, I believe.
Okay, can Blink Fox finally into that Vendetta to clear off this Dynamatic, and so now there's Leroy, double Abyss, and a Lackey for 2 more. So it's 16 damage,
Yeah, fits perfectly with mana too.
but how does he put Staz to 16? I think that's the hard bit right now.
Yeah, it's gonna rely on the Hench Clan Burglar specifically, I think. And the rest of the deck, I don't know how valuable it is. It seems like the Sprint is basically the Myras in this situation.
Yeah, I don't know if you can even play Myras now, because one of the problems as well is it might be what Staz is holding the Elic for.
Yeah.
If Myras comes down, then you just Elic. Now you can weapon,
Mhm.
swing, 2 bombs, 10 damage guaranteed, gone. Well,
For
13
Staz-
damage guaranteed, I guess.
For Staz though, honestly, seeing Flurry's hand so full, he might be quite scared of how do I deal with the next minion board. And now he doesn't want to use the Devastator without also having a minion to hit with when you magnetize Zilliax onto it.
You could just shield slam armor up if you really wanted to. He's gonna shuffle the bombs in now.
I don't hate this play. It's just holding onto your most valuable removal resource and stalling 1 more turn to get to either of the booms, which, by the way, both of them bottom 10 for Staz is pretty unlucky.
Yeah, that's unfortunate. There's another one. So it went up to 3 and now it's down to 2.
Yep. Void contract. Burn the booms.
5 cards for... okay.
That would have been so funny. Because after Myra's, your void contract doesn't hurt you at
Right.
all.
Oh,
But
well
yeah, it's just
that's
too
extra
slow.
damage, technically.
how does it take damage? You backstab it?
You backstab Arcane Shot. No, you've got Warpath.
Oh yeah! I didn't see that he had wow!
You've clearly never
Okay.
tried to play the Gunspire deck.
No, I've never. And I also just completely did not notice the Warpath. I thought it was counterintuitive to the Rogue, but that is very relevant. But so is that.
It is, and most importantly, the problem with why that card never really ever got going is because it's too expensive. 7 mana, you've got to make it stick, or you have very meager outcomes from the deal 3 damage.
So Staz, I think, now has to pull the trigger on the Devastator Ziliax play. He obviously wanted to save it for, I think, specifically Edwin, because that is just the tallest threat that he knows Flurry can generate. He also might be accounting for some randomly generated huge minion.
You could clear without though, right? You could use the Security Rover to go into the 1/1 to make a 2/3 taunt. You can Harvest Golem.
Well, he's not on Boom.
Oh no, he's not on Boom. What am I talking about?
I mean,
it's
I
because we kept talking about Boom, even
Yeah.
though I'm staring at the portrait. We kept talking about Boom, and I was like, yeah, so you just do this. We're late in the game. There's always Boom, and there just isn't. Ignore everything I'm saying. I'm an idiot.
But, I mean, I am used to that as well. But Staz is just going to hold on to the Devastator here. Clearly, always respecting Edwin, and I don't hate it because he doesn't have the armor to activate the Shield Slam. But it could backfire in this specific situation where every point of health is going to matter because of that Gunspire combo.
It's super weird though as well, right? Because doing it this way also respects sap to a certain extent, because you have to play Ziliax last, which means if it gets sapped, you only get Devastator back. But here comes the Gunspire.
Yeah, just set it up this turn. It's very unlikely that the Warrior counts that as priority removal. And then this Warpath is just 15 damage. What?
It's something that Flurry has to do to have a chance. We can see that it's just going to get killed, so it doesn't really
I
matter.
mean,
But
if you're Staz, do you want to kill that? Like, realistically, unless you put Flurry on having exactly Warpath, how much do you think that's going to do?
I don't know, but if I'm Staz, I do not want to throw this game by not clearing
Yeah.
a threat that can be cleared.
Sure. And now
Can
yeah.
Flurry even make a big Van Cleef anymore?
It's true.
Is my question. What cards are even left?
Yeah. I mean, on top of that, now Staz has Shield Block, Shield Slam, so he can just hold that too and feel a bit more comfortable. So I would like to see the Devastator.
I think Devastator, Stegatron's fine. Even Security Rover's
Yeah.
probably fine.
The Stego is a taunt as well, so it negates the 1 damage. So
what Staz has to negotiate now with himself is he doesn't want to just die from Leroy Step or whatever, but I think steps have been used, or at least one has. And also, he doesn't want to just die, but I feel like the play of just the Devastator into a 6-drop actually wins you the game more often. He's holding it. Wait, he's holding it.
Oh, I mean, yeah, it is exactly the Warpath, but now, with the Sap as well, Flurry can guarantee quite a bit of damage.
Especially because the Warpath kills the second part of the... He can sap, swing the weapon into the Harvest Golem, put the 1/1 in, then the first Warpath kills the second half of the Harvest Golem, which guarantees the damage to face.
Yes, that's insane. But it is down to just 12 damage because he has to use the 2 mana on the Sap, but you take the free 12 damage.
It's 12 guaranteed to face, which is why the Sap grants you more, right?
Exactly.
And now decision time though, because if Flurry saps a taunt, he knows the taunt can come back down the following turn, and then does that negate Leroy? Maybe sap.
It does negate Leroy, but it also just pushes so much damage.
What if there was ever like a sap Leroy play to get the Leroy damage in first and then you Warpath? I don't know. I'm trying to think.
I mean, with that
really
trade, he's clearly not planning to
Yeah,
sap
I know he wasn't planning to now. He's just going to Warpath now. Okay.
And this is the rope again when the animations on the Gunspire and the Warpath combined probably take long. I do think that no matter where the hits land, he's just going to go for the max Warpath.
He's got to work out whether he swings the weapon in, right? Okay, there we go.
Was there time?
Yep, he's fine.
So the way this ends up is Staz did not take that much damage, and I honestly wanted to see the sap there, but...
I mean, not take that much damage. He's down to 10.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, 8. And there's a Leroy and Eviscerate.
Didn't take the max amount of damage, and I am unsure how relevant holding on to sap is, even though he would have gotten the guaranteed taunt. But this still works out really well for Flurry.
Yeah. And now again, you've just got to... Staz has held on to Shield Slam and Omega Devastator across so many turns that I feel like you could have used it. You do have to wind back time a little bit and think, well, he's still got them in hand, and now he might just die. And that scares me a little bit. Because as far as I, correct me if I'm wrong, but there's only a big Van Cleef that you would have desperately needed Devastator for. And is a big Van Cleef really going to be a huge problem at this point in the game?
Probably not, but
Is that 3 bombs?
yes, 3 bombs
So,
left in deck.
Lethal? Question mark?
if you Myras, it would maybe.
I mean,
yeah.
it could just be lethal this turn. Okay, it's not.
Not
Could have been
quite.
though, only 14 health. That is less than 15 last time I
He still has
checked.
a miscreant left as well. So does the turn start with Leroy to get combo activations?
Or do you just Van Cleef?
Yeah, maybe. I
You
mean,
Van Cleef first, right?
Yeah.
Just Van Cleef into Michigan.
yeah, probably holding on to the Leroy with Sap in hand is more valuable than
Yes,
trying
yeah.
to get a big Edwin because it may or may not be too late at this point. If he really wanted to, though, he could go like Leroy Miscreant and I don't know. It probably does just start with Edwin, I agree.
One thing he doesn't do is Myra's, because he could just lose. Oh, he's starting with Fist. He is
Okay.
going for a big Edwin.
Okay, with the 2 lassies, I can see this. Staz maybe gonna be rewarded for holding on to Shield Slam so long and devastating.
Okay.
Mega Wind Fury guy.
Gives Mega Wind Fury, right? He doesn't have it himself.
Yeah.
just before anyone gets excited. Right, now how do we give it charge?
Turning
I
into a shaman player he is.
would have been terrified of Mana Wraith that turn.
Alright, so obvious brawl here, and Staz, no matter what minion survives, it will die to the Devastator. Just unfortunate for Staz that he can't fit in the hero power, but now he's seen so many of the burst cards from Flurry that he needs to only be worried about exactly Leroy's Step, but he's at 13, so Leroy's Step Dagger is a real possibility.
Has he definitely got one left? I can't remember whether he's played 2 or 1. I'm so...
Yeah.
Because this is game
I'm
number
sure
3
too,
of this
yeah.
exact deck. It's kind of tough to keep track
This is crazy! Raven, hello?
every time.
What? Staz and Edwin.
Edwin
Still
Van
a better
Cleef.
love story than Twilight. But yeah, this is really unlucky because any other minion he could have used Shield Slam instead and fit in the hero power to play around the we don't know if there's
The
still
Shadow
is a
Step
step.
lethal.
Yeah, but that lethal. And if Staz is like hesitating on the Devastator, I do think there is a
I'm
step
really
left.
surprised at what he's hesitating for. There's no other play apart from Devastator in this.
Probably just whether or not he swings, but I think you always swing here. Just
Um,
put another bomb in the
yeah,
deck.
it's
so
more likely for lethal,
yeah,
right?
I mean, if he has a Leroy Step, there's nothing you can do about it. But if he doesn't, you can at least make the Myras
There's one.
impossible
Needs one more.
for Flurry to use. Yeah.
And that's one more, and Staz is going to take
Oh.
the win.
And we'll never know if there was still a Shadow Step left until we watch the VOD. But
Yep.
congratulations to Staz putting his 2nd win on the board there. And I think with some pretty clean play, I mean, we did not agree with not devastating the Gunspire, but of course, we had the caster vision, we saw the warpath, but how often do you actually play around that exact
Right.
combo from discovered spells and minions?
Yeah, it's tough, right? Because I think about it one way, and I'm definitely not saying it's right, but I always think, well, could this just randomly win the game for my opponent? And is there a scarier threat? And I think at that point in the game, it becomes, as a guy, I guess, unlikely that there's a massive Van Cleef so late in the game when there wasn't tons of cards. So it did end up coming out, of course, but by the time the Brawl came out, he did need the Devastator anyway. But even the Shield Slam that was actually never used at that point could have been used way earlier in the game just to alleviate some of the pressure. So definitely a few options, but that's kind of the joy of Bomb Warrior right now, the stylistic approaches, especially when you're against a deck like this deck from Flurry. So we are going to get hold of Staz in just a second. I'm interested to see what he thinks about mainly just going up against this. I believe Staz can hear us now.
Yeah.
Hey.
Hi, Staz.
So congratulations on the win, friend. I just want to ask you, first of all, how confident were you as Bomb Warrior going against this specific rogue deck with Flurry's approach of playing to the late game and more of just a slow combo style?
I feel like I'm not really favored. I think it's just around 55 to 45%, 55 to 45 match up. It is possible that Rogue can still outvalue the Rogue, and if I got the boom like what happened last game, if I got the boom really late like what happened last game, I feel like the Rogue. It is possible that Rogue can still outvalue me, and I think does he have Leroy and Shadow Step at hand?
He didn't have Shadow Step, but he had Leroy and then Myra's, which was unplayable because of your bombs.
Oh yeah, okay.
Yeah, I want to ask as well, before I'm sure Gia's got some questions, but is Van Cleef your most hated card in the game right now? Because I feel like all weekend we've seen Van Cleef survive brawls against you specifically.
Yeah, I think it was around like 5 times already for this weekend.
It's kind of insane, to be honest.
Grabe
don't
talaga
hate-
yung malas mo stats.
Yeah, I don't hate Van Cleef. I hate the brawl.
Yeah.
That's fair enough.
Yeah, I feel like I should have bought Big Game Hunter instead of brawl.
True.
It's more reliable.
I also want to ask, what was your reaction to seeing the Warpath Gunspire combo? Did you panic after that?
Yeah, I didn't expect him to get Warpath, but yeah, I mean, there's nothing I can do about it anyway, so I just kind of accepted it.
Okay.
Were you ever considering actually using Omega Devastator on the Gunspire as a just-in-case scenario, because you'd still not seen Van Cleef? So it was just maybe get that down and get that as a tempo play, as effectively putting a Yeti on and removing the Gunspire?
Not really. I feel like the only way I can lose that game is by him having a very big Van Cleef, so I
Okay.
kind of saved my Devastator for that. Yeah.
And we cannot blame you given the luck you've had with Edwin throughout the weekend.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of nutty overall. But again, just congratulations on the win. We know you needed it this week, especially just to get these wins on the table and make up some of the losses you've had previously. And I hope it continues in the rest of the week. So good luck next week. We'll see you then.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, good job for Staz there again, a win. And again, we've talked about it a lot. This is day 3 of this weekend, of course, for us. But I do think the Warrior pick is just so solid, at least for this weekend. Who knows what happens next weekend, because we have a whole new meta to play with. But before then, we've got 5 more matches to play out as well. So we've got match number 2 coming up. Don't go anywhere. We'll be back with some more Asia Pacific Grandmasters.